Hey, hello there, friends. Good morning and welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Showdown Strategy Show. Fun game on tap tonight. Actually, a pretty sweet game. It is the Green Bay Packers at home, laying 3.5 points against the Washington Commanders. Should be a fun one. Both teams 1-0. Dominant win for Green Bay in a divisional spot against the Lions last game out, and a divisional win against a far inferior opponent for the Washington Commanders. But I think this game, it's 3.5. Like, I think this stays close. Chris Spags is joining me as always. What do you think, man? First thoughts going into this one? Jaden Daniels has an uncanny ability to just extend drives and keep games close.
Yeah, I'm excited to see this one. I think it's kind of a playoff type of game we're getting early in the year. And I'm as big of a Commanders fan as I am anybody in football right now, in large part because my betting was so aligned with Jaden Daniels and with Terry McLaurin last year. This year, same thing. Jaden, one of my highest exposed QBs in best ball. Deebo Samuel is more of the play for me this year. It's a cheaper one. But he obviously good week one. I'm excited to see what they do. Wasn't super impressed with Washington in week one. I thought Green Bay, more impressive overall in terms of how they handled Detroit. That could also be a little bit on Detroit's side. It seems like the game calling there, not as exciting as it was, not as competent as it was last year with the new change, offensive coordinator John Morton. So we'll see what these teams have tonight, but I'm hoping it's a fun one, and I'm hoping my boy Jaden does something useful.
That was my thought as well. I actually just did a betting video, the ones that go up over on OddsShopper, and I was like, hey, both sides of the ball, Green Bay looked pretty dominant. There's no doubt. However, the overreactions to week one, if you're going to react, make sure it's commensurate with what you saw on both sides and not just one side. Like, and by the way, good call. You were saying how you thought Miami could just be terrible. Looks like you're on the right side of that. However, I want to point out, it's also possible the Colts have a really good defense. Two things can be true at the same time is what I'm saying. So, like, to your point, the fact that Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson are gone and this is their first game and the Detroit didn't play any of their starters in the preseason, it's also entirely possible in Lambeau Field in a divisional spot that they still have some kinks to work out. And maybe Detroit comes in and blows the doors off Chicago inside the dome this week as well. If you saw Detroit come in, would you be shocked if this 30-13 type game? No way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, Detroit, too, the total looking a lot higher this week. So I think in some respect that does speak a little bit to the market saying, last week I thought that was a shockingly low total going into Green Bay where they had, I think, 22 implied points is where they ended up for Detroit. So I think there's some market signs for sure. Even this total for Washington this week, 22.5 implied points. This is a team that reliably has been 25 to 28 points since they kind of caught heat at the midpoint of last season. So I think for Green Bay, I think there is some market beliefs on that defense being good. But that said, looking at the numbers, they didn't create crazy amounts of pressure, only a 19% rate there, sack rate of 4.1%, nothing crazy. They got a little lucky in interceptions in terms of that being higher because they weren't deflecting a ton of passes either. Only a 2.6% rate of pass deflections. And then also they had a 3% interception rate. So for Green Bay, I'm just not sold they're world beaters, but they might get treated as such tonight, which I think offers some opportunity.
I do too. All right, let's get into it. I appreciate all you guys hanging out every show with us. If you don't mind, take a single second, atone for your sins this fine morning. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. Let me know where you're going for this game, any angles you may have. And I thought about this morning, Spags, and I'm not going to comment on any of the events that happened yesterday. What I do want to say is this: we do these shows as a distraction from all of the garbage that happens in the world. And that doesn't mean you ignore it. It means that you take an hour out of your day and try to, kind of level yourself out. The reason I say this is because we have an amazing community here. This chat is always, you guys are awesome, right? And dare I say, even a loving community here with Stokastic. And given everything that's going on, I appreciate that. So I'm not trying to get mushy or anything like that, Spags, but I do appreciate good people and that type of stuff when I see it. And when I do these shows, when I look at chat every single day, there's a lot of shit out there. And we have a lot of good people that come and watch these shows and subscribe to the channel. I'm greatly appreciative for it, and I mean that.
Yeah, hey, I agree. I mean, I think that's a nice thing to say always, but it's definitely true to have the support system here in Loughy. I mean, you've been a fixture of it. I think you generate the goodwill, even though you and I might not always see things eye to eye. I think you present a level-headed way, and I think you're the kind of guy I want. I want to feel good no matter what's going on in the world.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. We have a lot of good people here, and it doesn't go unnoticed. As Jake said, this chat is the perfect escape from all of the other nonsense. So yeah, man. Try to recognize good in this world. I promise you there's a lot more of it than bad. It's just so easy to recognize all of the shit that goes on. All right. I promise you there's a whole lot more good than bad. Embrace that. All right, let's get into it. I want to talk about Jaden Daniels first. I think we have to. Dude, he's 41. We're getting 41% at the captain spot. Okay. 41% at captain. And I don't think it's crazy. This guy is so capable of doing everything. And there's a part of me here that goes, hey, this is a really good Green Bay secondary. You look at last year, you look at last week, their secondary is good. Their pass rush might not be elite, but it's good enough. They have a good defensive line. This may be one of the games where Jaden Daniels is forced to tuck and run more than he wants. Like, if it's not there, you may just see him take off. And this isn't to say Green Bay doesn't expect that and they're not preparing for it, but it's very tough to prepare for somebody like Jaden Daniels, even when you think you are. Like, a good defensive line for the Giants last week still gave up almost 70 rushing yards. He does so much with his legs. I don't think he's exorbitantly priced to the point where you can't do it. And if you're looking at the other captains, let me just kind of lay the foundation and get your thoughts. Jordan Love, good player, but this team wants to run the ball. They had the third highest run play percentage in the league last year, fifth highest last week. He only attempted 22 passes, and he attempted them to 10 different pass catchers, whereas 7 of them saw 2 or fewer targets. That's what you deal with when you get a showdown Jordan Love slate, okay? So I look at him, I go, could he be captain? Sure, right? The correlation's tough to attach there with specific players. He could be, but he's not going to run a whole lot. Debo, okay. Josh Jacobs played 100% of snaps last week. Perfectly fine with him at captain. He is the clear goal line back. He is the dominant alpha back in that offense. McLaurin's still getting reacclimated. He was targeted like 2 or 3 times. So I go down the list and I see all of these captains where you say, you know what? It's a showdown slate. Anything can happen. But to me, Jaden Daniels is the clear best captain on paper.
Yeah, and I think, too, he's one of those guys where people haven't gotten there mentally. I know there's a lot of people that kind of are waiting for the other shoe to drop with Jaden to show the ugly side. I mean, he was so great at LSU. That's part of the reason why I was really deeply invested in him across everything last year. In addition to best ball, I played him on like every DFS slate. Didn't always work out. He didn't create a ton of value for the passing stacks in the way some other QBs did. But still, every week, he's giving you, at least, I would say, 15 points, usually around 20 to 25, sometimes a little more upside than that. He's one of the players tonight. I find it hard to believe he doesn't make a winning lineup. And I think people start treating him, like a Josh Allen, like a Lamar Jackson. We're on a slate. You should assume that these guys are going to be on the teams for a showdown winning lineup, or most likely they're going to be. And obviously you could pivot off of them. You could play a Green Bay defense if you want, try to play, Jaden not making a winning lineup. Maybe you play some Krosky, Merritt, some Eckler, play the run game a little bit more, sucking some touchdowns away from him. It's a possibility, but it's a guy that runs, 8 to 10 times a game, a guy that off the one game sample size, like Loughy mentioned, about 70 yards last game, potentially on pace to be a 1,000-yard rusher as QB. That's the kind of player you don't fade. The deep shots he'll take sometimes, I think, can also be a little bit better, but definitely offer some volatility on the positive side. But the rushing floor, I just find it hard to believe he doesn't make it in the flex. I think it's very likely he also makes it as captain. I'm a big Jaden believer, so I'll couch that accordingly. I'm in the bag for the guys as much as it can be. That said, I just think the talent's so huge, and the fact that he brings these components, he's a phenomenal passer, and he runs 10 times a game. This is a guy you should always want to play.
I was curious of your thoughts here. The fact that, if you're captaining Jacobs to Love, or I'm sorry, Daniels or Love, they're $1,500 separated at the captain spot, right? Is that enough, though? Is that enough of a salary discrepancy to where, we're getting 12% Jordan Love? I can understand that. But, if you told me they were $2,500 apart in the captain spot, I wouldn't really blink bat an eye at it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, I like Jordan Love. I think he's shown pretty well. There's been talk about him running more this year. He only ran 2 times last game, but did run both times in the red zone. So there's some theoretical touchdown equity there.
Yep.
I think Jordan Love's a strong play normally on a showdown slate, at 10K. But I agree with you. Like, I think that he's a significant tier behind, Jaden Daniels in terms of the floor, in terms of the ceiling. Again, a lot of the offense can flow through his hands this year, but still a guy that, last game only dropped back 23 times. And like, we've talked about, Green Bay had that game mostly in control, but the rate of dropbacks isn't as high for Jordan Love. Last game, no receiver ran more than 20 routes. Like, is the pass, effectiveness there? Is the pass volume there? I think you can question that. I have nothing to question about Jaden. The entire offense flows through him. Whereas I think Green Bay would be happy to run the ball and keep the ball in Jaden's hands if a certain game script works out.
Yeah, I absolutely think so as well. I'm also fascinated by the idea that, and I think you just mentioned it. When you look at last week, they didn't have to run. They didn't have to throw a ton. It was 22 pass attempts, right? But man, you look at the route run data, and it's like, dude, what do we do here? Jaden Reed actually was the one that had 2 deep targets. You didn't see any for Matthew Golden. You look at him, you're like, this guy is a prototypical deep threat. The first guy that they've drafted in the first round since 2002, first receiver since 2002. And you look at the split between Dontavian Wicks and Matthew Golden. And Wicks played more snaps for sure. He was out there for 63% of snaps. However, a lot of those were blocking downs or running downs because he's a better blocker. Matthew Golden's not going to provide a ton there. Golden played 66% of snaps, right? So I don't know what to make of it. What I do know is that they're both lining up predominantly outside. And do you think it's possible that just week over week we start seeing Matthew Golden eat into the Dontavian Wicks opportunities more and more?
I would think that's how it should go. I mean, the issue is that this was a very split room last year, really. A lot of guys getting targets, a lot of guys getting work. I think with Wicks, one thing that stood out for me last year is he was a guy that was around a 30% target per run rate, which for me is sort of a hallowed marker to have for these guys that means you're getting targeted well, especially when you're out there for a good amount of volume. And Wicks was out there. Obviously, people were disappointed in him because he did have a little bit of the dropsies, didn't necessarily convert some of the highest value plays, but when you earn targets like that from the same QB, I tend to think it's a little bit hard to get that guy off the field. And for Golden, he was not a great target earner in college at Texas. It was like a 20-21% target per run rate guy. And that means to me, he probably wasn't ready to make, a big target share leap in year 1 in the NFL. People saw him in the college football playoff. He had one monster game where he got targeted a bunch, but that entire year he got targeted, substantially less than Xavier Worthy did the year before last in the same offense. So I'm not the biggest Golden believer, and that does cloud me a little bit. In terms of one play, him getting there, I think is a possibility. But it is noteworthy that Loughy mentioned, didn't get the deep target last week. Jaden Reed had a 42% target per run rate. All the concerns about his foot injury and all of that kind of overblown. I just don't know that Golden, to me, is a guy that I expect to earn a ton of targets. He can get you a touchdown. He could make it, close to making the flex in one play. But I'm not sold on him being as easy of week 1, week 2 runway guys. I think the market's kind of thought initially.
Yeah, I think that's a very reasonable take. But, the one thing I keep coming back to is when a team that hasn't drafted a receiver in the first round in over 2 decades goes out and does that, I do think there's some equity there. Or I should say there's at least some. Forgive me, by the way. I got a call from a buddy at 8:45 after I put my oldest to bed last night. And he's like, yo, you want to come play hockey tonight? We only have 4 skaters. It's a 9:40 game. I was like, all right. I get there. The game before us goes to overtime, so the game doesn't start till 10. Of course, I stop at Wawa on the way home. Spags, don't get home till around midnight, and then scroll Twitter till 1 o'clock. So the brain is not working this morning. So when you see me searching for words that are typically right at the front, they're buried in the back today, man.
I can't imagine doing it, man. On the couch at 10 o'clock, I'm drinking Miller Lights now, trying to kind of ramp down the calorie count, but still get a flavorful beer lunch. So I had 4 Miller Lights yesterday and a Coors Banquet on top of it. I'm a big macro guy now. And I can't imagine playing hockey at 10 o'clock with 2 children. You're a hero in my mind for being able to do that.
It sucks, but it's fun. It's worth it. We had a guy, we needed one more. This is not my team. We're filling in. This big guy, he refs a lot of games there. Cool dude, but he We get there and he played the game before us. He's like, whatever, fine, I'll play. Because we had only had 5 at that point, and it sucks playing with 5. It means 1 sub because it's 4-on-4. And I look at the bench, like he was drinking a twisted tea on the bench in between shifts.
Well, that's, funny thing I learned about twisted teas, and this, I guess, is not I shouldn't say this is a funny thing. A thing I've learned about twisted teas, alcoholics love them because the lack of carbonation, you can like drink a lot and you don't get all up inside. I didn't know that. I don't know alcoholism that well, besides, my own flirtations with it, but not to twisted tea levels. I didn't know that was like a thing.
I only knew because I had a neighbor who just moved, a good friend of mine. They would funnel him, which is to me, it's nuts. It's like party tricks. But anyway, you see what I'm saying, right? Like, there has to be some incentive for them to want to get him work, but also, do they need to do it early on? The answer is really no with Matthew Golden. They don't need to just immediately plug and play like a Neighbors or a Brian Thomas Jr. where they didn't have any other options. So I get that. But I do think there's some type of I'm super interested in a Matthew Golden today because we don't really know. So that's why I wanted to pull ownership up and get your thoughts. And I haven't looked yet. If Matthew Golden ends up being popular just on name value and first round equity alone, I will consider getting virtually none of him. No joke. But if not, to me, that opens up some opportunity. Right now, we're seeing 18% utility ownership. We're seeing 2% at the captain. That seems very low, comparatively speaking, to some of these other guys. Less ownership in the utility than Daniels, Love, and obviously he should be less owned than a lot of these guys. Jacobs, Dobbs, Debo, Kraft, McLaurin, Ertz, Jaden Reed. That's pretty low. He's like the 10th highest owned guy. So I'm going to take some shots because out of like interest alone.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to cut you off. I think you're clipping where I was clipping.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah. So for Golden, I'm with you. The Golden ownership seems low. And I do think, people in the chat pointing out, Eric saying, did Marvin Harrison Jr., I don't remember specifically, but had a stinker week 1, made the Millie Maker the second week. That happens all the time. Like a guy bombs out week 1, people file him away as him not being good. Certainly last week as well, where Tet McMillan wasn't great, but like he was playable enough. Obviously, Buka was a big outlier. And you see Golden doing nothing. I think people hopping off the Golden trade more than they should. And week 2 is a possibility. And I'm with you, Loughy. I think the draft capital too. Like, I think that does matter. Like, that's a big belief, is that when teams draft a player that highly, they kind of force the ball to him more to justify showing off their own investment. So I think Matthew Golden's an interesting play this week at 20% expected ownership overall. It's a little bit low. I think it's hard for me to expect him to have captain upside. And, really the fact too that they were using him as a lower ADOT player, only 4.5 air yards per target on the 2 targets he got last week. It wasn't the way I expected him to be used, where I thought he would kind of replace those Christian Watson routes. Instead, it seemed like they had Romeo Dobbs running the Watson routes, which I don't think was my expectation with Golden being so, game-breaking fast. Dobbs apparently has looked fast in all of the preseason and all of camp, but he's not a fast guy. So there's upside for Golden. The usage in week 1 would have me worried, but the ownership being that low on a showdown, if you're 20 maxing, 150 maxing, I think it'd be foolish to like X out Matthew Golden and not play him.
Me too. And look, I'm with you. It's hard for me to see the upside from a captain standpoint. I'll sprinkle him. I don't mind getting like 4 or 5% Golden to captain, still get above the field there. But you look at last week, you and I were talking about the routes run and the targets and everything. Wicks ran 9 routes. Reed ran 12. Golden ran 13. Jacobs ran 15, played 100% of snaps. Dobbs ran 17. Kraft ran 18. Musgrave ran 4. Fitzpatrick 4. That's what you're dealing with. So to me, there's on one hand, there's so much uncertainty that it makes this pretty gross. On the other hand, if any one of these guys ended up having that game, I wouldn't be shocked. Like, you look at the target count, Reed had 5, Kraft and Dobbs had 4, Golden and Wicks had 2. There's not a big difference at all between 2 and 5. Okay. That's not 3 targets and 12, where guys clearly the alpha dominating the workload. The quarterback clearly loves him. 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 is something that could flip on its head week over week, and you really don't know. That's what I'm getting at. So it just muddies the water, which is actually kind of an opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the thing too, and it sucks because like that's what Showdown is. Unfortunately, is that these guys I would say have a very similar probability of hitting in a in a
Right.
major way. I would say if I were to pick a guy, like I think Jaden Reed gave me the most underlying hope. I think Dobbs having some deep shots and being previously a Jordan Love safety blankie, I think is pretty good. Like I have my preferences, but Tucker Kraft had the most routes out of this team last week. Like he's a guy that's playable. You have like a legit 4 or 5 options of receiver you could go to. And maybe that's what makes Jordan Love at captain more appealing is you put him there, you put a couple pass catchers with it, and at least you get a shot at one of them breaking out. But the fact that these guys, nobody's going to really know who is your alpha target owner. People may be still concerned about some of the injuries lingering for Reed. It probably keeps the ownership in check more, and Golden being stinky in week 1 keeps his ownership in check. So probably the biggest money-making opportunity here. And ownership-wise, it does seem like the field's favoring Dobbs. So that alone means just playing the lesser-owned guys and getting that direct leverage right away probably wins somebody money if it works out that way.
I think you're right. You look at Dobbs is 4K. That's crazy.
That's too cheap.
That's like objectively on paper, Dobbs and Kraft are the best options here. That's how I see it. Dobbs played 97% of snaps. Kraft played 100, right, Spags? So like if you just put targets aside, because I really do believe they're just going to be in flux, those 2 price points, and for what it's worth, you're seeing right now that ownership is reflecting that at the utility spot, like 38% Dobbs, 32% Kraft. Those are objectively just underpriced guys that played either the entire game or almost the entire game. And by that, I mean all but one offensive snap last week. I actually, is this right? I'm looking at snap counts. I may be looking at the wrong, because it says Love played 48, but then Dobbs played 30. Do you have snap counts pulled up? Because the source I'm looking at might have these filed wrong.
I keep dropbacks for QBs and some of the other stats here. I have it on another page. Who do you want to know the snap count for?
Dobbs and Kraft.
Dobbs, I've got it 34. Kraft, I've got it 44.
That's what I do too. So I think I have the snap count right, but the percentage wrong. Because do you have Love at 48?
Love, let me see. Yeah, Love at 48.
Okay.
Are we taking from Fantasy Pros? I think we would say it, right?
No, it wasn't fantasy. It wasn't Fantasy Pros.
Okay, minus for people out there, Fantasy Pros, good CSV export. That's the one I use. You should have to have a free account on there.
Yeah. Anyway, Dobbs still led all receivers in snaps, and Kraft played almost every snap. So while those original percentages were wrong, you get my point.
Yeah.
Then you're talking about $8,200 Jaden Reed. That feels like an overpricing to me, but I'm still willing to get some because you have that explosive game-breaking upside. We saw it week 1 in Brazil last year against the Eagles. If you didn't have Jaden Reed, you were dead in the water before the game even began. $6,400 on Matthew Golden, $3,600 on Wicks. So, yeah, I think pricing is going to dictate a lot here when you have so much uncertainty in the pass catcher field for this Packers team.
Yeah, they should all be priced like 6, 7K. I think, maybe Dobbs, if you want to put them a little below, you can, but having this much of a chasm between them where Jaden Reed's 2X, based on the numbers, based on what they did last year, even, I don't think that's correct to have Jaden Reed 2 times as expensive, even though the ceiling's obviously been a little bit bigger, like Loughy's talking about.
Hit on some comments real quick here. We had put me in the game, coach said, man, Golden ain't the number 1. Is that coming up? Yeah. On this team, though, y'all go ahead and play him. Yeah, I don't think anyone's suggesting that he's the number 1, but I think there's a suggestion that there's a lot of ambiguity around this team, and I don't really know if there is a weekly number 1. And in New York, I know who the weekly number 1 is. On the Jets, I know who the weekly number 1 is. And the Jaguars, it typically should be Brian Thomas, but like you go. Sure, T. Higgins may have a game, but Jamar Chase is the number 1. CeeDee Lamb is the number 1. This team verifiably does not have that guy.
Yeah, they don't have an alpha target earner. I mean, last year was a bunch of guys between like 17 and 25% target per route run. Besides, Wicks was a little bit higher, but was playing less routes, so it kind of came out in the wash a little bit more for him. But yeah, I don't think there's an alpha here. I think week 1 it did seem more like Jaden Reed being your alpha, Romeo Dobbs being number 2, but Reed also played less snaps, so naturally when he's out there, they're going to try to get him the ball in creative spots a little bit more. And running backs were not really involved in the pass game last week either, so I think that's part of Reed getting a little bit of an uptick. But yeah, I agree. Like, there's not a number 1 Golden. Theoretically, I think people assumed he's going to be the number 1 based on the draft capital, but I just didn't see that profile coming from college, and it might take him a while to get there if he does ever get there.
Right. Perfectly fair take as well. Someone said that Kraft is the number 1. Yeah, I mean, I'm not positive where you're getting that information from. I suppose you could say that he's, one of the top guys, and I think that's a pretty reasonable take, but to suggest that he's just like the clear number 1, he's not. You look at
he got 4 targets last week. That's not, if that's a number 1, then we have no number 1s. We have too many number 1s, I guess.
Right. So you have a 1, a 1A, a 1B, and a 1C. Is that what you're telling me? I don't know. I look at last year. Dobbs had a 19% target share. Wicks was 16. Reed 16. Kraft was 15. Watson was 13. Jacobs was 9. That's what you're dealing with here. So yeah, it's kind of gross. Anyway, anything else you want to? We went out of order. We typically do on this show, which is fine. Any other thoughts on quarterbacks, just to flip back before we start talking running backs here? Because then it gets a little murky in Washington.
No, I mean, I think the quarterbacks seem appropriately owned. Again, I think there's 2 players I really find it hard to believe don't make a lineup tonight. Jaden's one of them. Jordan Love, I think there's a little more volatility there. But yeah, I'm a big believer in Jaden. Jordan Love, I see the case for. It really is just a weird pricing slate. I think that's the other thing we've kind of talked about the receivers, but Jordan Love being so expensive, the receivers being at weird price points, even though they're kind of all the same guy in terms of definitely last year's results. It's definitely a showdown slate that I feel like has more unique pricing than they do usually.
All right, let's talk running backs. Before we do, the promos may be over, but if you guys haven't signed up, gotten your free months of Stokastic Sims yet, literally no easier, no-brainer way to do it than right here, using any of our sportsbook partners to sign up and get a free month of the NFL Sims package, or any month you want. You see this where it says like DraftKings +1. Of course, you're all on DraftKings, but Underdog, Chalkboard, say Caesars. You sign up for all 3 of them. If you're in non-legal betting states, we have all of the pick'em sites too. Every single one of them equals a free month of the Sims. So look, here's the link. If you click that link that says sign up with any of our partners, get a free week of the Sims. You see this here, right? Choose one of them. You have to click claim offer. Otherwise, we can't track it. Sign up, deposit, and place a bet. That's it. That's literally it. Then take a screenshot of your welcome email, your first settled bet, email it to us at support@stokastic.com. Tell us what you want. The minimum deposits on all of these are $5 or $10. That's it. Okay. That's it. So like if you're not on Underdog or Sleeper or Better, BetMGM, Chalkboard, Fanatics, Caesars, sign up, deposit your 5 or 10 minimum, place a bet. Once it settles, take that screenshot in the welcome email, send it to us. Say, hey, can I get a free month? Oh, I signed up for Caesars, Fanatics, and Chalkboard. I'd like 2 free months of the NFL Sims. And can I get one of PGA or whatever other sport is currently ongoing? I don't know, but you get the point. Stack them. And if you win your bets, great. Now you're truly free rolling. You're already getting a massive discount. Like, what is it? Probably a 90% discount off the Sims on top of more than a 90%. Probably 90%. Also, you're getting bonus bets. You're getting match deposit bonuses here. Even if you weren't getting the Sims, this is something you should be doing hands down, especially when you consider that, last year we just had monster wins with people using these tools. And it's no surprise, right? Like we had 3 Millie Maker winners last year. Last year, Spags, 3 Millie Maker winners in the NFL. You know how hard that is? 3 Millie Maker winners in one season?
None. I haven't done one sloppy.
I know. But we had some monsters. Last week, our own Steve Buzzard took down $200K using the tools, and many others as well. This guy, $11,000 using the $1 promo. So if you haven't done it yet, guys, do it. Place any bet today on the Thursday night game. Wake up tomorrow morning and have the Sims for an entire month. I mean, is there anything better than that? I'd argue the answer is no. Anyway, links down there. Super easy to do so. Spags, talk to me about the running backs here. I want to start with Jacobs because I think this is a little bit more of a streamlined analysis process. He's just going to be on the field a ton. I said 100% of snaps. Again, that was wrong, but 42 out of 48, good enough for me.
Yeah, I mean, he's the lead back. He's one of very few true bell cows in football. I think it might have been a little bit different if my sweet boy Marshawn Lloyd had hamstrings that are made of a little bit more than kitten yarn. But I think at a certain point, that might change. For right now, though, Jacobs last week having 20 intended touches in that game. That's one of the best workloads in football. Not quite Christian McCaffrey level, getting over 30, but more than enough. And the big thing that stands out to me, including last year, 5 red zone intended touches per game is what he had so far in week 1. Similar amount last year, 3 of which were inside the 10-yard line for Jacobs, and that's where he makes money. So he would actually be the second guy, I think. I find it very hard to believe doesn't make a winning lineup. He and Jaden Daniels be 2 of my highest exposed guys, because I do think that just cramming in the guys that, for the most part, in most game situations, they should make a lineup, I think is it. Jacobs disappointing last week for sure. I would say versus Detroit, I think he finished with like 13 PPR points, something like that. Nothing too great.
A tough matchup, man.
Yeah, it was. Detroit's defense is good, but like 13 points on this slate still probably makes a lineup, I would think, probably makes it in the flex. So I think for him, Jacobs, hard to fade to me. The other guys, Emmanuel Wilson, Chris Brooks, not really in the mix in a meaningful way at this stage. Certain game scripts they could be, I guess, if the Packers are playing from behind, but I don't think that's going to happen in such a huge way that they would kind of cut Jacobs' snaps. So I'm with you. I'm actually curious your thoughts, but I assume we're going to be on the same page of Jacobs being a player that we want to be, at least with the field on, with the field being about 2/3 of the ownership.
Yeah, man. I think he's my second favorite captain play this week. Yeah. It's just opportunity, right? Is it possible Love, gets opportunities to run it from the goal line? Sure. But if there's a running back, who is it going to be? We know who it's going to be. It's going to be Josh Jacobs, right? It just has to be. Unless, barring an injury or anything like that. And I'm not really in the business of trying to figure that out. So I like him. And, if you take it a step further too, this is also a guy who, remember, he started off last season doing nothing, and then he had like 9 touchdowns in 6 games or something. But when you look at Josh Jacobs in the passing game, he's not a world beater, and nobody is suggesting that at all. But what he is someone who last week ran a lot of routes. He's on the field so much that if you say, all right, you know what? 15 routes run, the most routes run were 18 by Kraft and 17 from Dobbs. Jacobs ran 15. He only had 1 target, 1 reception for 4 yards, but that he's capable of doing it. We've seen game logs last year where he's actually had pretty decent performances in the passing game as well. I mean, I'm looking at it now. 4 for 26, you'll take that all day long on 6 targets. 4 for 58, 4 for 74, 4 for 42, 4 for 38, 3 for 28. Yeah, if you told me you could get him dominating all of the rushing attempts and then also like a 3 or 4 target game, you're not, and all of the goal line opportunities, he clearly, from a workloads perspective, there isn't a guy on this slate who you could anticipate getting more work than Jacobs.
Yeah, I think especially too with what we talked about, pair the conversation with what we said about the Packers receivers, like that's a really split workload, or at least it should be based upon the longer sample size. And even last week with Jaden Reed getting targeted a lot, in the micro, he still wasn't out there as much as some other guys. And I think for Jacobs, his role is just kind of unquestioned, unless, the Commanders pull up like 2 touchdowns and are majorly in the lead. Then maybe you get Chris Brooks out there more. He played 9 snaps last game. Emmanuel Wilson played 2 last game. Like they could get a little bit more if they're really behind, but in a normal game script where this game's competitive, I agree. Josh Jacobs just does enough in the pass game. They don't have to swap him out. He's the best pass protector on the team, or if not, at least tied with anybody else on the team. So I think for Jacobs, he's out there a ton, and I would think he scores a touchdown. I don't think the betting markets, that's a hot take, but I think an anytime touchdown for Jacobs, he makes a lineup if he scores a touchdown.
Can we talk about the running backs for Washington?
Oh, I hate
JCM,
it so much. Yes.
Bill.
I'm not a Bill guy.
Krosky, Merritt, Austin Eckler. Chris Rodriguez. Watch, he's just active this week.
It would throw a little bit of a wrinkle into things, I guess, though. He was apparently on the roster bubble, so people shouldn't have been that surprised about being inactive. McNichols does a little bit more special teamer, but I would like to see Rodriguez be active because I think that's the only thing that could stop Krosky Merritt from being too good for most people out there.
We saw last game, and some people were very anti-Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt coming into this season, right? That's why the whole depth chart explanation, you know this as good as anybody. I'm not saying you shouldn't pay attention to it, but the whole depth chart, where they rank on the depth chart ahead or behind this guy, it's so meaningless in the grand scheme of things, because if someone comes out there and just starts playing well and there's already a lot of uncertainty among the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, what does it actually mean outside of just kind of arbitrarily listing them there? Not Saquon Barkley's ahead of Will Shipley. Yeah, obviously. But there's a few backfield scenarios where what does it really mean? We see it time after time. I'm not saying throw it away, but it's not to me, it's never a flag plant situation where you just go, oh, okay, good. Best ball lineups. We've wrapped them up. That is the season. Good. He's 4th on the depth chart and I have none of them. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I full disclosure, I got Krosky Merritt wrong. I saw the hype, and it's one of those things where I think.
I wasn't talking about you. I'm saying in general.
Oh, no, I know. I'm just for people having the color, of knowing that I feel like I have to kind of course correct a little bit. And for what it's worth, the projection for Krosky Merritt from Stokastic is not fantastic today at 7.5 fantasy points. So he doesn't seem like a screaming play right now. But that said, he got, I think, a fractional amount of the Brian Robinson role. Didn't quite get as much overall work, didn't get quite as much red zone work, but he got a pretty good role for himself. I think people clouded by maybe one big play a little bit. If you didn't watch the whole game, he wasn't as involved as I think people thought he might be, but was more involved that people who were down on him thought he would be. But Eckler, pretty even split. I still like Eckler more. The projection support Eckler more. A little bit cheaper, a little bit better projection, 9.4 fantasy points compared to 7.5 for Krosky Merritt. At spot 2, where I think, this has been a Green Bay team that last week, at least in week 1, obviously Detroit being the offense they are, it skews things a little bit. You have 34% targets to running backs last week. I think that's something that's more Eckler's game. Krosky Merritt not going to be as capable of a pass catcher, even though he's probably going to be at least laterally, even with what Brian Robinson gave him. I hope people play Krosky Merritt a lot this week because I think the projection doesn't support it quite as much. But I think for week 1, he showed me enough. It's just what does his workload do in week 2? Does he move ahead of Eckler? I don't think so. In a game that feels to me like kind of you trust your vet, you trust the pass game work that Eckler brings a little bit more.
The whole situational / game flow of this one feels a little bit less appealing for JCM than it does than last week, right? Because I'm not out here preaching JCM is the next CMC, at all. No way. Look, my JCM exposure came with me on DraftKings, just grabbing him. I know you do a lot of underdog. I was just firing on DraftKings. You got 20 rounds. I was grabbing him in the 19th and 20th round for all of late June or July when they had the OTAs and stuff. And I heard good things. It's what's the worst that can happen? Because I don't think Brian Robinson's very good. It was a throwaway pick. But the moment you saw all those reports, there's no way I was touching him at 75. All right. So I also drafted a bunch of Roman Wilson. All right. And I'm not sure he got on the field. So
Aaron Rodgers did talk him up. I thought he was going to start passing up Calvin Austin too. It didn't happen. So that's where the preseason whispers get you a little bit.
Yep. Well, for me, it was just that he was a 2nd round pick and Pittsburgh has a history of drafting good wide receivers and he was going undrafted. So in the 20th round, I was just all right, fine, I'll take him. Literally just undrafted in every draft. I can say that wasn't great. Not to mention Calvin Austin just had a good game. He had 3 deep targets.
It's not over for Roman Wilson. If he gets that Calvin Austin role, he's going to be cooking.
Yeah. We'll see how that works out from initial. I make a good play on those late round picks. I can promise you that there's someone I've paired it with, in later drafts that also didn't work out. It's just the way it goes. But JCM in this spot, I don't really love it at all. I'm with you in that Eckler kind of looks better because you trust him to be involved kind of no matter what happens.
Yeah, and he was limited, or I think he was actually limited, but it was also like, what was it? They called on Monday where they didn't practice. Like he was like theoretically limited on Monday. He had a little bit of a shoulder injury, so if you want to ding him for that, we have seen shoulders knock out a few guys lately for some period of time. That's something that maybe you want to go JCM's way and think he gets there. But frankly, I'm not sold. They're going to trust him in the pass game enough. The target route run rate was pretty similar with JCM and Eckler. It just wasn't as much of a route share for JCM, with only getting 6 routes last game compared to 19 for Eckler. So I like Eckler. I would take Eckler. But, JCM, if the ownership of Stokastic says he's not going to be owned, maybe take the shot. But I'm with the chat, too. I think we were on the same page as well. I just don't think it's a game script where you have JCM kind of safely getting targets, or getting touches rather, being up by a lot. I think they're going to have to be competitive, and I don't think you just want to show JCM out there as a guy is, pretty much everybody agrees is not a ready pass catcher for at least this stage of his career.
What do you think, though, about the way ownership shakes out? Because you and I are on the same page. Everyone should be on this page, right? That, hey, ownership is really important for these slates, especially if one guy gets steamed. Let's do this. Let's look at flex. Right now we have 32%. This is our first run. Things will update throughout the day. And if you're a Sims user, make sure that, you're utilizing these runs close enough to lock. Little less important with Showdown, but you still want to do it and keep an eye on inactives. But we got him 19% owned, 32% exposure. What about a captain? 2% owned, we have 4%. So we are above the field. JCM, we have 13% owned. We're about getting half the field's exposure there. And I would imagine if that's the case, at captain, we're not really getting any of them. So yeah, for the time being, we actually have a lot more Eckler than JCM, and the ownership there doesn't seem to be a huge discrepancy there. You're talking like 7% in the utility and probably like less than 1% at captain. Yeah, 2.3, and so a little more than 1%, 1.5%.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see this little Krosky Merritt coming. I guess I'm not, based on the projection, and the fact that the projection is definitely lower in Stokastic right now for Krosky Merritt than it is for Eckler, about 1.6 fantasy points higher for Eckler. So that's enough here, given the fact Eckler is also cheaper. Look, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt can punch in a touchdown. Like, I don't think he's a fantastic play relative to the game script, but
right
at 13% ownership, I mean, he did get 2 red zone opportunities last game, one of which is at the 10-yard line. I would want to even out Eckler and Krosky Merritt more than this. I think they're both players that I think make sense. I wouldn't be mad at forcing one each, like one Eckler, one Krosky Merritt in every lineup. I don't think would be a crazy thing to do either. That's low for Krosky Merritt. I don't know if the field's going to be that low in him, though, because I think the field thinks he's Jesus, which is also kind of the issue.
Yeah, it's actually quite comical because there's no real middle ground on Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. Either you're just like, you hate him, or you think, hey, look, man, we were spot on. He's the guy. There's nothing really in the middle. But I suppose that's just the world we live in these days, Spags. There's no middle ground, and it translates to fantasy football too.
Also, I hate when the chat says things that are just wrong. Go F yourself. He's been a member on my channel. He's a member here on Stokastic. Eckler not using the red zone. He had over 2 touches a game in the red zone last year. He had 2 last week. He's using the red zone just as much as Krosky Merritt is based off a 1-week sample. It's inaccurate, and they were just splitting drives last week as well. So don't view that incorrectly.
Eckler will absolutely be used. Now, look, who knows? Maybe Chris Rodriguez plays this week and ends up getting goal line touches. That'd be crazy. If Rodriguez plays, I would downgrade Merritt, JCM before I downgrade Eckler, though, because Eckler has more pass catching equity.
Yeah, fully agreed. Rodriguez offers something that they think they have enough of in JCM, but if he's active, he might immediately take the red zone work that's going JCM's, where at least 1 or 1.5 of it, something like that.
All right. Last question on running backs. Would you be okay playing both of those guys in a lineup? Because that's where it gets a little murky, and I'm not a big fan of that.
I think it's kind of fun, to do that for a showdown, to play the running backs or not, super crazily priced. I don't think touchdowns are going to be, and I could be wrong about this because these are two offenses that should be good on paper, but the total isn't screaming it. I don't think there's going to be a ton of touchdowns in this game. Again, could be wrong about it, but I think if you have JCM scoring a touchdown, Eckler either enough in PPR or he scores a touchdown plus that, I think they could make it. I don't think they both make it if one's a captain, but I think both making it in the flex is possible, especially with that weird Green Bay stuff we talked about, the receiver room. Those receivers, maybe none of them make it, and you get two Washington running backs, and I don't think that'd be a crazy pathway to take.
Yeah. Now I want to ask you a question before we get to wide receivers, because I think we hit on with Green Bay. I'm not sure. Do we even need to cover Green Bay receivers? I think we extensively covered them earlier in the show.
Yeah, just Dobbs cheap. Dobbs too cheap, makes him highest owned. It's just, I think that's really the main thing to take away. Breed too expensive, makes him too lowly owned. It's a weird dynamic, but yeah, we covered that so much.
Yep. And I'd say that Golden, due to my intrigue, it's like, hey, I kind of just want to, you want to touch it to see if it's hot, even though you kind of know that's my intrigue. I'm intrigued by that. I want to get to a little bit of Matthew Golden here. I think he's going to be pretty low owned after last week. Maybe he gets to your point on JCM though. Do you think there's a world where Matthew Golden just is a little bit more popular than projections and ownership would account for based on the hype around him coming into the season, him being a first round draft pick for the first time in 2+ decades? You know what I mean? Like, do you think that could skew ownership in a way that isn't really quantifiable?
It's possible. I just don't think we saw enough from him in week one. And I feel like people really love to jump off these hype train plays on, more casual slates like a Thursday Night Football, a showdown tends to be. I actually think it wouldn't surprise me if we saw Krosky, Merritt, and Golden's ownership flip to some extent. I just don't think Krosky Merritt, relative to the hype, that he goes under 20%, even though, chat, you and I seem to be aligned that it's not really on paper great Krosky Merritt game script. I think the fact that it is a Thursday Night Football slate and Krosky Merritt showed a lot more last week than Golden did. I wouldn't be surprised if Golden comes a little bit low and JCM comes out a little bit high just because of that, the nature of all those things combined.
Yeah, I could see it for sure. Wide receivers here. Outside of Green Bay, we covered all of these guys. And at tight end, I'm just going to tell you now, Tucker Kraft, we covered him as well. While Spags and I do not agree that he is the number one target getter week over week, I think it's fair to say we both agree that if he's going to be on the field for the large majority of snaps, still a quality pass catching back, or tight end, can actually break big plays and will get targeted at times in the red zone. $5,400 is objectively too cheap on Tucker Kraft on a day where some of these other wide receivers in Green Bay who have very similar projections as he does are like $2,000-$3,000 more expensive.
Yeah, Kraft and Romeo Dobbs just too cheap for what, the roles seem to be, and this split target share like we've talked about.
All right. We need your help here, Spags. Can you break down the wide receivers for Washington today, knowing that you had a lengthy holdout for McLaurin? He's got another week to kind of reacclimate, at least you would assume. Still played a ton of snaps, ran like the most routes, I think 33 routes last week. Deebo Samuel looked pretty decent. He's still not the fastest fella out there, but he knows how to get open. He knows how to catch a football, and he knows how to find the end zone on run plays. How do you break all of this down, given that they do look different than they did last year?
I was a big believer in Deebo coming in because, again, as somebody that was so invested in the Commanders last year, I watched every single game start to finish. You just wanted to see how they were doing and, had a lot of money tied into it. So kind of went hand in hand. McLaurin had a lot of touchdowns last year that I just didn't feel like were McLaurin touchdowns. Like it was like slant routes at the goal line, stuff that, screen plays, things that I think naturally fit over with Deebo. And we kind of saw that in the first game. Deebo picking up 10 targets, McLaurin picking up 4. McLaurin having an ADOT of 19.3, air yards per target, Deebo 7.2. They were just different roles. And I think the Deebo role is one that is Cliff Kingsbury offense is when it's pretty valuable, especially when you have, one of the running backs not being a great pass catcher in Krosky Merritt. Some of that stuff flows Deebo's way more. So that said, Deebo went off in week 1, so people are going to play more Deebo. I think Deebo's a better projection play. I think McLaurin gets a little bit underplayed because of the fact he's more expensive and the fact he was such a non-factor last week. But McLaurin's another guy, one play, kind of like Golden, can easily make a lineup just off that one touchdown he catches. He does get the deep shots. They don't connect as many times as I would feel like Jaden and Terry McLaurin should connect on those really deep bombs. But they both have utility. I would definitely favor Debo, but at McLaurin being 36% projected ownership, it might be lower because he just was not involved at all last week. And I think people might write him off and just think Debo's the new number one.
If that happens, if we come closer to lock and ownership looks like it's skewing heavily towards Debo, there's just simply no way I don't want to get over the field on Terry McLaurin. No way, no chance I don't want to get over the field there. I look at last week, and it is not a just simple diagnosis. You don't just go, oh, Debo over Terry McLaurin. What about the fact that Debo was out there all summer? Terry McLaurin had a pretty lengthy holdout. He was there, I think, at practice sometimes, but not on the field. And what did he sign his contract 2 weeks ago? Mm-hmm. If you want to be like, oh yeah, but they have chemistry together, they have history together, sure. But you get back on the field, sometimes it takes more than a week against other professional NFL teams, albeit not a great one in the New York Giants. I wouldn't be shocked at all if Terry McLaurin ended up leading the team in targets today. At all. He still led the team in routes last week. Is there a price factor here? Sure, but they're not that. What are they, $400 separated today? I'm going to be paying very close attention as ownership as we draw closer to lock. Right now, you look at Terry McLaurin, he is 6% at captain, 30% in utility. Debo 7.5% at captain, 34%. They're pretty close. It's kind of neck and neck. If that is where if this slate goes off and that's the ownership and it in advance, what would you want your exposures to be between those two?
I think for me with McLaurin, I'd probably want to get 2x the field on that. I feel like 10 to 15 feels about right for me, especially, 20 max plus whatever I put into the Millie tonight. So I would say for McLaurin, I think getting above the field on captain is definitely the priority, but I just think he's under-owned for that fact. And frankly, too, I'll play him in the flex, but I think if you want to not play McLaurin in the flex, play him more at captain, try to capture the upside of him catching 2 touchdowns, them being deep shots, the yardage coming with it. Or even just flipping, I guess, target share more meaningfully. I'm not quite sold that's going to be the case with the usage pattern for these guys, but McLaurin to me, I think a captain in particular is almost in some respects more appealing than the flex.
That's a good call. Hell, if there's a way to get different, Terry McLaurin, there aren't going to be many slates where he's only 6% owned at captain.
Coming off a bad box score game, which does inflate ownership sometimes on these Thursday night, Sunday night, Monday night kind of games. People look at that game last week and be like, oh, he was awful. And they'll think Debo's great. And, that sometimes keeps the ownership even more in check than it should be.
Yeah. And you might see that more in low stakes stuff too. Low stakes might give you some great opportunities to take some buy lows, where people clearly overreact to one performance without digging into the actual data. That could be one of those spots. Look at some of these tertiary options for Washington. You have $3,200 Noah Brown. Are there other spots that you're willing to get to? I think Zach Ertz too is just always a perfectly fine play here. He's proving in Washington that despite his age, he still finds ways to get into the end zone. McDaniels likes him there once they get inside the 20. He may be a bit of a safety valve here if you have Micah Parsons. I saw someone mention this in chat. If you have Micah Parsons breathing down Jaden Daniels' neck.
Yeah, and Ertz has been a safety valve. I think in particular we saw in the playoff run last year / the end of last season, Jaden really did key in on Ertz in the game scripts where it was a competitive game and he had somebody to kind of move the ball down the field. I think Ertz does offer that. So I'm definitely intrigued by Ertz. The tough part with Washington is they're kind of I would say a poor man's version of the Green Bay situation where you have, an established 1/1B with McLaurin and Debo. But then besides that, you have Noah Brown ran 21 routes last game, 33 snaps in that game. Jalen Lane mixed in a little bit, not really a guy I'd prioritize, but he was getting drives when Noah Brown wasn't out there. He can catch one pass. That's the issue with Jaden. Not really an issue. It's a good thing for him, but for a showdown, it's kind of the issue is that there are guys that Jaden will sometimes go through that could score a touchdown. And on a showdown, if you don't get a touchdown from Noah Brown, a touchdown from Jalen Lane, you might not win the money you could win otherwise. So I think those guys have to be in the mix a little bit, but in terms of captain upside, in terms of ceiling, to me, it's McLaurin, Debo, and then Ertz, I would say pretty distantly behind that, but still in the hunt. The other guys, I think they're more of a flex play. You get some of if you have the money, and Noah Brown at 3K and change, he fits. I think that works.
Yeah. Chris Moore, Luke McCaffrey played a little bit last week. You're right though. It does kind of get Green Bay-esque once you get past McLaurin and Debo. And I think Ertz too. I think you could categorize Ertz based on salary as someone that's not safe, but you know what you're getting out of him.
Yeah, 27 routes last game too. Like
yeah.
he was out there as much as the other guys, basically.
Do you have any? All right, if you had to, because we're not going to go like tight ends is kind of unnecessary here. I'm gonna have to ask Joey to make some of these differently because we don't really need this. I might just do like standard next time and we just go where we want. So if you had to do two guys, favorite punt plays, not defense, not kicker, under 4K.
Under 4K, I think Wicks. Wait, so not including Dobbs because Dobbs is 4K flat.
Yeah, no, and that's too easy.
Okay, so if not Dobbs, I would go Wicks. I think 3,600 for him is pretty appealing. Besides him, Jalen Lane. I think Noah Brown. I think Wicks and Noah Brown are my two. That's the most expensive. It's not very fun. Musgrave, you get some theoretical leverage, I guess, against Kraft, but he got 17 snaps last game, only 4 routes. He's not involved enough. So I think it would be Wicks and Brown. They actually have roles and a little bit cheap for those roles.
Those are my guys too.
No, it's not like Brave because they are the most expensive under 4K.
Yeah, but also, what are the real alternatives? Are there Jalen Lane? Jalen Lane, he did run 12 routes last week. It's that's not saying that's a lot, but he was targeted twice, ran 12 routes, had a really good camp. We know that he had a great summer and kind of popped off. $1,600. I won't ignore that either. Is he exciting? No, but how often do you have a guy that could pull 2 targets at $1,600, Spags? That's the least I can say. That will actually be on the field. That'll run, hopefully around a dozen routes, maybe more depending on the way this game flows. Because last week they dominated possession throughout the entire game. Yeah, I could see 1,600, no issues there. I prefer him over anybody else sub Noah Brown's price point.
Yeah, and also he is 1/3 the ownership of Noah Brown, and I think the opportunity is pretty similar. So yeah, I could get with Jalen Lane, but I would say projection wise, like volume of field time wise, like Wicks and Brown, I think would be your chalk under 4K.
Yeah, for sure. And then you have just like a Luke McCaffrey who exists.
Yeah, McNichols probably needs somebody.
I'm sorry, not Luke Musgrave. I'm sorry. McCaffrey, obviously, I guess you could say the same thing for Washington.
Yeah, all the Lukes suck today.
The Lukes just are there. All right, we'll wrap it up in 1 second. Before we do, first of all, appreciate all you guys. We got 500 people hanging out, 544 hanging out with us. If you haven't done so yet, hey, subtle reminder, tap that thumbs up, subscribe. It's free. We're over 100, so I appreciate you guys greatly for that. But if you're not rocking the Stokastic avatar, do yourselves a big favor. Put yourself in a position just to win free stuff, all right? Say it all the time, every single time. The picture of your dog or your car, hell, even your kids. I love my daughters to death. Even my dog, as dumb as she is, laying right behind me, I love her to death. She gets dumber with age, but you know what? I still love her most of the time. I don't need the only people that want to see that, Spags, are family and friends. And even then, it's like, all right, wrap it up, pal, right? You win a tournament. Your cute dog is up there. Your 2 beautiful kids. That's great. But no one looks at that and goes, man, would you take a look at that golden retriever? No. But when they see that beautiful Stokastic avatar, they say, hey, that fella just won himself a free month of The Sims Max. And then they see up there again in a calendar year, you go, damn, he got another month plus a week. And then the third time they go, he just got all access, $550. Smart man rocking the Stokastic avatar, going to stokastic.com/HOF, downloading it, uploading it wherever it is he plays. And when he finishes top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, no matter the entry fee, could be 5 cents, 10 cents, 25 cents. You're getting all that beautiful stuff. I mean, is there any better way to just collect, Spags, when you have a good winning day?
No, I mean, and you didn't even list the best part, that if they do enough winning, they could get a watch and a celebration. And in fact, some of that special Loughy DNA, because you're shipping it yourself. So they can get
No. It's not coming from me anymore. I do have one right
I
here.
thought they all come to you as the clearinghouse. I thought they get some.
No. That's too difficult. I'm not going back to the post office, but they're sweet, man. Like they're engraved, on the ring with your name, Stokastic Hall of Fame. That's for a 20K plus win. The watch, you're thinking of a competitor.
Oh, sorry, ring. Yeah, my bad.
But also,
I was more excited about your DNA. I wanted to.
But the watch is for $1 million win. You don't need that with $1 million. I mean, it's a nice gesture. This is 20K. That's attainable. That's attainable.
And you can't wear a watch around your genitals, but you can wear a ring.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it depends on girth, but this one,
kind of fill up a watch.
Go F yourself. I'm not dog shaming at all. I just told you I love my dog. Spags, you have a dog, right? You've got
I do.
A dog.
She's sitting over there right now. She's a dog named Kitty. It's a 8-month-old puppy. She's a pain in the ass.
I'm just saying, enjoy your dog when you're with them. Don't force other people to enjoy your dog.
Nobody wants to see the picture. Protect your dog's identity too. You don't want the kids.
That's a good point. Don't dox them.
Yeah.
You don't want to dox your dog.
Dog dox is the worst kind of dox.
Yeah, the old dreaded double D. The only time you don't want to see them. All right. Appreciate you guys. Love you all. Have a great rest of the day. We'll see you back here tonight for Live Before Lock. Go check out Spags over on, which is it on the Splash Play channel?
Yeah, at Splash Play Pod, I'll actually be doing another version of a showdown video coming up in an hour, looking at sims from Stokastic, comparing some industry sim stuff. So I think it's a valuable video coming up at noon Eastern time at Splash Play Pod on YouTube or Twitter if you want to check it out.
Yeah, definitely. You guys are the best, man. We'll see you back here tonight. And then tomorrow, Sim Show. Remember, first look for the week. We got the Sim Show yesterday, single lineup strategy show. All that stuff lives here on YouTube. And it will have a significant shelf life. If you missed it live, go back on YouTube. Feel free to find it. It's under the live tab. YouTube categorizes things very stupidly, I should say. Very stupidly, Spags. And I wish they would just put them all in the same spot, but they don't. But that's where you can find previously live show. You know what I'm talking about. I don't like it.
I do. It's annoying because you have to put playlists on the homepage to then make sure people actually see the videos that you created, which is kind of dumb, but maybe they'll figure it out. YouTube's only the biggest, video platform in the world. So eventually they'll get there.
Anyway, always fun, brother. We'll see you guys back here soon. Appreciate you all. Have a great rest of the day and see you tonight. Bye-bye.